request for us to. We call this press conference because there was a request to speak to the media about it, so in the end we thought we'd do it in concert with the people who wanted to be here, and this is an announcement of the portfolios that we've got, not as to what they are, but to the size and character of them. We are delighted to have got these portfolios, but more important than a portfolio is a budget policy to go with them, and that's what we've secured, and we think that that was critical for this coalition to start off in the first place, and we're here to answer any questions that are fair and reasonable as much as we can, given that in these negotiations there was some commonality of interest, and we're not going to take the position of saying that's ours and ours alone. And so demarcating off who got what and where in the financial context does not apply in some parts of the budget, as I said yesterday as well. Any questions?
You've got foreign affairs, you've done that before along with racing. I mean, why is it important to you? What do you think you can bring to particularly foreign affairs?
Well, I think I can bring to foreign affairs a thing called experience, which is rather important on the international scene. The last time I had the job, I spent a lot of time to turn around our relationship with the United States, and I think even our worst critics would acknowledge we were successful in doing that, but also to expand our understanding of, for example, the East Asian relationship, which was beginning at that time. And there are a number of things internationally which I think New Zealand has got a capability of having a strong voice on, even to the extent of we do not think that North Korea is an utterly hopeless case. We do not think, for example, that China is the reason why. We need to better understand that region and make our contribution, albeit as a small country, but an informed one.
The last time you had foreign affairs, of course, you went to North Korea. Any possibility of that again?
Well, a number of us thought that we could persuade the North Korean regime to give up its then present nuclear development program for substantial economic development as a compensation or as an incentive. We didn't succeed, but it was worth trying. We did, though, funny enough, get some success. We ensured that 97,000 birds that transit North Korea to New Zealand to Miranda continue to get safe harbour because of those efforts. So it was an unusual outcome, but maybe we can shoot higher this time and might possibly be successful.
Three of your MPs, Mr. Peters, have international affairs roles. What does that say about the direction of New Zealand's foreign policy? Is there any specific direction you'd like to take it?
Well, contrary to the perception of us, we are a party that understands international affairs, are interested in international affairs. But like most countries, we understand that our democracy requires us to put our own people's interests first.
So can you maybe explain a little bit about New Zealand's foreign policy under New Zealand First Labor government, with you as Foreign Minister and two other MPs in foreign roles?
Well, the happy conjunction is that the movement to understanding that our neighbourhood was our number one priority has been going on for some time, and that's common in our understanding with the Labour Party. The second thing is we do need to be a good international neighbour wherever we are, and I hope this time when we talk about punching above our weight, we have the resources to justify that statement.
Do you believe that?
Your party opposed the deployment of trainers to Iraq. They're due to come home at the end of next year. Do you see any premature withdrawal of them, or would you see them carrying out their mission until November next year?
Look, we would not make a decision like that sitting in this room. We'd have to make sure that the Cabinet was on the same wavelength as a Cabinet in concert with the Prime Minister's view. I don't think that we have a big difference of opinion in this Cabinet on that question, but I'd wait to see what the discussion brought forward.
The Prime Minister-elect has talked about retaliation for Australia in terms of student fees there. On this side of the Tasman, would you be in favour of that? Do you think it's time we retaliated to Australia for the way they treat our citizens there?
Well, I think there's a way that we can work our way through this, and that will certainly be the ambition of New Zealand First and myself. In the end, if I could just say that the greater education of the Australians within New Zealand could only enhance both countries, Australia and New Zealand, and a better understanding of their country, of the New Zealand economic and social condition. But on the other side, we need to better understand what volume Australia was taking. And it is not a small amount of money they're talking about. But there's certainly a lot of areas which I don't want to outline now that we have to work seriously on to better our relationship with Australia.
In May, Mr. Peters.
I think we can't deny it, that here we are in October 2017 and our relationship is not what it should be. I think the Prime Minister and Labour Party, I think everybody in this coalition understands that, and we're going to set out to try and improve it as fast as we can.
In May, you said that Jerry Brownlee should go and apologise to Australia when he went over there after taking on the role, for New Zealand being used as a stepping stone for people going into Australia. Will you apologise, say sorry?
Well, this is not something new in May. I said that way back in the late 90s. I said it in 2000, 2001 when we ended up with the Howard Clark arrangement, which saw the end of our special relationship. We should have better understood why the Aussies took the action they did. And if we can get them to understand that we have a sympathy with the decision they had to make, maybe we can get ourselves back on a sound footing. But putting the cards on the table, being honest, would be a good start.
Have you spoken to Julie Bishop yet?
Sometime today, I think it's going to happen.
Where do you expect your first overseas trip to be?
We've got no quite idea at the moment. Perhaps it'll be Hanoi, WAPEC, maybe the East Asia Summit. It looks like that's going to be run in tandem, but I haven't made up my mind. I'd suspended all judgment on that until 11:30 today when the Prime Minister made the announcement. Whatever's going to happen, we're going to stick by the protocols and do things by the book.
Can you explain the...
What do you think an EU or a British free trade deal with New Zealand should look like?
Well, pre-Brexit, this party was talking about closer Commonwealth economic relations, a new arrangement of 2.2 billion people, in which we could see New Zealand having a key role because we presaged it and thought about it. And I can say that the British Foreign Minister has already contacted my office to make a contact and discussion today. The happy conjunction is we were on the same side then, we're on the same side now.
So the British Foreign Minister has already been in touch with you?
Via the Foreign Affairs.
So do you expect to talk to him sometime this week?
I just got to find a better time than the evening.
Have you met with him previously?
No, I haven't, but he actually, funny enough, I can't tell you this because it's a private matter, but he contacted someone thinking it was me because when he was here last, he signed an autograph book that he wrote about Churchill for me personally. So he made the mistake thinking he was talking to me when he sent this message.
So what did he say?
Oh, it was private. It's private.
There's some discussion in the West about giving up on the nuclear deal with Iran. Do you think that they should abandon that deal?
Well, the way that it's been reported at the United States, it's not strictly correct what is being reported. Trump did not say that, the way it has been reported. So I suspend any comment until I know.
didn't say that he said it, but there has been some discussion about whether the West should abandon that deal.
Well, it's too early, without being a far better brief than I am, to give a view on that.
Are you concerned about Iran's influence in that region?
Well, I'm concerned about any growth of nuclear weaponry, whether it be in Iran or be in North Korea.
What concerns do you have about Chinese influence in New Zealand? There was obviously a recent report. There's been some concern in Australia. Do you think the issue needs greater consideration by the incoming government?
Well, I don't think that the thesis put out by a leading internationally acclaimed person on this out of Canterbury University is some sort of report. I think it should be taken far more seriously than that, and that's where the base we'll start from.
Can you explain a bit more about
Did you guys have a leadership vote?
Pardon?
You guys had your caucus meeting today, your first of the parliamentary term. Did you have a leadership vote?
No. All that's happening very soon, but not today.
When will that be? Do you know?
Well, we have to have a WEPS vote next caucus, and we'll probably have a leadership vote the caucus after that. But first things first, I mean, would you rush into these serious negotiations and have a leadership sort of spill or a planned spill that suits the media in between times? I don't think that is a very good, sound strategy.
Well,
Are
the
you
reason
worried?
I ask is because
Pardon?
isn't
Are
that
you
what you've
worried
done
about
historically?
Am I worried about the kind of questions which takes this serious discussion about 4 ministers and an undersecretary, very critical jobs, down to that tawdry level of political party engagement.
Were
That's
you
what I'm
raised
worried
this
about, yes.
Right.
I was somewhat hoping that you could lift your game, if I might say so.
Is the leadership of your party a tawdry affair?
No, but this discussion at this level on matters that are seriously to do with this country's future puts it in that category.
May I ask a question about the state-owned enterprises portfolio?
Yes.
Why have you taken that on? Is there a specific interest or reason that you've chosen that to be among your portfolios?
Well, I've had interest in state-owned enterprises since they first were transferred out of the public domain and ownership as a halfway house to privatisation.
You also
I've never ceased to take an interest, and knowing at the time that that was its ultimate Douglas Rogernomics purpose.
Do
You
you intend
also-
to change
you
the
also-
law as it applies to state-owned enterprises?
Done?
Do you intend to change the law as it applies to state-owned
Well,
enterprises?
when we're properly briefed and updated to each SOE, we'll make that decision, yeah.
Are you prepared to sell? Are you prepared to sell any of the SOEs that come under your purview?
This government's stated policy is not to sell.
Does
You
that
promised
include solid
you've
energy?
actually promised to sack the board of Kiwi Rail. Are you going to honour that promise?
Look, we'll just get to where each one, as we are briefed and thoroughly understand what it is they have been doing and not doing.
Remark.
So in short, we're coming seriously prepared when it comes to railways, as we've demonstrated on the Cook Strait ferries and we've demonstrated on respect to the East Coast, the Wairau connection rather, as we demonstrated on the 70,000 sleepers that were bought, mainly of rotten wood, and deal after deal, this is one party that's coming to it, better updated, better briefed than any other party. We know exactly when it was sold, the 20th of July 1993, for $328 million, disguising $72 million, which is on the debt, and within 3 weeks it had grown the asset value of Fay Wishwide and Wisconsin Central Railroad by $181 million. Railways is in the parlous affair as it is now because it was privatised just a year after Booz Allen says it was on the way to making $100 million profit and rising. Across the table on April of the 26th of 1993 jumped Fay Wishwide saying, who had made themselves the financial advisors October the year before, hello guys, we're the buyer. It didn't even go to tender. That's why railways in that state and why we're going to set out to rebuild it again.
May I ask
Can
a
you-
question about the United States and your previous experience in enhancing New Zealand's relations with the United States? What can you tell New Zealanders about how you will approach dealing with the Trump presidency and any particular sort of concerns that Kiwis may have about Donald Trump being President of the United States?
That's in the province of the Prime Minister.
Can I ask you?
Ron Mark, can I ask you, as Defence Minister, the previous government had an enormous procurement plan planned for the next couple of decades. Will you continue with that, or are you going to run the ruler over it and start again?
Well, what's very pleasing is that there is no change to the quantum allocated for the capability review. There's a plan that's already in place. I think New Zealand First has always been concerned about the type of expenditure, the way in which procurement has been managed in the past, some of the purchases that we've entered into, and the results, one of them in particular is sitting in the hangar in Trentham, and so we'll run a ruler over that, stay within the allocation that exists, but seek to get better quality decisions.
So will you put a pause on it for now while you have a closer look at it?
I think I'll wait for my briefing and we'll take it from that point there, but I really want to see where they're up to. I do know that some projects are already well advanced. It'll be a case of getting a clear understanding of just how advanced those projects are and what it is the taxpayer can expect to get for their money.
And Mr. Peters, there's been some concern domestically about the increase to the minimum wage by 2020 from small businesses. Do you think that small businesses should change their model, or is it fair that they're worried about those increased costs?
Well, it's a fact of modern businesses. You're always changing your model, always modernising, always updating. But we specifically set out in our manifesto that we understood the condition of small business and we had taxation initiatives to help them in the same way Australia did, as a similar example, to ensure that they could pay their workforce more whilst remaining profitable. We understand that a business has got to be profitable to pay the wages, but we are a low-wage economy in comparison to Australia, and it's not being doom or being dark as some commentators are complaining New Zealand First is being. It is facing the bare, cold facts, stark as they are, of the difference between payment, occupation by occupation, trade by trade, New Zealand and Australia. And we also believe, as many others have believed in the past, that a higher wage regime will drive far greater productivity, and productivity is what we're going to seriously put some work into, because it's been flatlining for 6 years.
Can you or Shane Jones talk about the $1 billion fund for the regions, and what sorts of projects you see it going to?
Well, Mr. Jones can certainly talk about it, and that's why I'm going to ask him to do so.
The provincial / regional $1 billion fund, the full extent of the projects, it'll be revealed once we've had a briefing and engaged, obviously, with the Minister of Finance. But just to give a flavour, from that fund, we're going to meet the capital costs of rolling out the billion tree strategy. We're going to use it for neglected provincial infrastructure projects, not the least of which, some of which will be rail. There's already been a host of requests on my cell phone from regional airports and a variety of other things. But I think the key point is that each year there's going to be per annum $1 billion worth of funding. The vast majority of it is dedicated to the capital projects that people tell us have been neglected over the last 9 years. And I'd be reluctant to specify until we've met as a cabinet.
Would that be adjusted for inflation?
Sorry?
Would that be adjusted for inflation every year, or would it just be $1 billion every year?
Let's tease that detail out once we've met as a cabinet.
Yeah, but given the demand, though, is that going to be enough? I mean, people are going to be queuing.
Well, the Prime Minister-elect has pointed out there are some pretty robust budgetary rules which she wants her government to observe. I'm not that naive to know that there's an infinite level of projects. We all heard about them over the last 9 years, and this is a robust step forward. But I don't want to say that it's going to satisfy every project from the four winds of Aotearoa.
But will you decide, or how?
Sorry?
Who will
No, we
decide?
will work through with the Minister of Economic Development, Mr. Parker, and the Finance Minister, our criteria, so that allocation decisions meet a very high threshold.
Would it be a panel?
Sorry?
Would it be a panel?
Yeah, we'll address those details once Cabinet has met.
The Prime Minister
There
was...
was a mission a post opened in Dublin recently by the previous government, and the post is yet to be filled. Could there be a job there for Murray McCully?
It's not out now, but one of the provisions of the agreement, the 38 pages of it, which are still, in terms of some minor details, being finalised, specifically says that in diplomacy we're going to send the best, that a political appointment will be a rarity. When I finished last time as Minister of Foreign Affairs, there wasn't one political appointment. I don't expect people to join Foreign Affairs, work their butt off, train for a career, and be superseded and passed over by politicians seeking to live out their lives in luxury somewhere else. I want people fit for purpose. Now, I don't say a politician can't do that job, and there have been some rare examples where they've been spectacularly successful. But in my experience, far too many have gone abroad who weren't up to it.
So it's a no from McCully then?
Well, I don't know why you're coming here as an emissary for Mr. McCully. It is southern.
I'm
It
worried
is.
about Ireland.
Well, now I'm redoubling my question, and that's why you're asking it.
Mr. Peters, just following up on your comments here, is there a 38-page, for want of better description, addendum to the agreement yesterday that has other sort of rules and requirements in it, like that will be released at some point?
Yes, it's going to be released at some point, but the reality is that these are projects the Prime Minister will explain better than I, and it's her responsibility to explain it, but these are directives to ministers with accountability and media strategies to ensure that the coalition works, and not in a jealous, envious way, we got this and they got that, but as a government successively, cohesively works. We put a lot of thought into it. In fact, in day one of our negotiations, that was the first subject we raised. But how are we going to handle a cohesive coalition arrangement?
The Prime Minister made some mention of how fisheries industry was under some pressure and it wasn't doing too well. What do you see as some of the struggles and some of the things that aren't doing too well in that particular sector?
Well, we haven't got that portfolio. And maybe because a number of vile allegations were made which are demonstrably untrue. But let me say, we've got one of the biggest coastlines in the world, and we have an understanding, and that is in the agreement that you've seen, that agriculture has got a future. It will employ thousands and tens of thousands of people if we are clever about it. And if we want to see how a conscientious, sustainable, green economy works when it comes to fisheries, go to Scandinavia. And you'll see what we could be doing, and we think there's enormous opportunity, particularly for Maori, particularly for those on the coastline, that we're not taking advantage of.
What do you
Peters,
make
can I
of the
just ask
split
Mr.
of the
Peters?
primary industries portfolios back into those traditional agriculture, fisheries, forestry roles?
Well, because the forestry project is so big, and I'm glad my colleague and one of our New Zealand First Ministers has got it. This is an idea that we've been speaking about probably now for something like 22 years, the need to set out to demonstrate what this country can do environmentally and also for the advantage of our economy. Now, 50 million trees are grown already a year. We're going to make it 100 million towards a $1 billion program. Now, I enunciated that at a speech long ago that Shane remembers at Russell by circumstance, and then Shane organised a huge conference in Whangarei just before the election, where again we set out what we're going to do. So I'm pleased to see it's there.
Who will plant the trees?
Pardon?
Who will plant the trees?
Everybody and anybody who we can enlist to do it, be on state land or on private land, we'll work in concert with them. It's not an attempt to take over the ownership of it, but make them part of the solution.
Can
What
be
kind of split is
beneficiaries
there?
or?
It'll be people who are unemployed, yes.
What kind of split is there between plantation, forestry and native trees?
Yeah, I'll answer.
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, there's about 1 million hectares, more or less, in plantation forestry. And I think the Prime Minister has already referred to the need for permanent carbon sinks. And the fast-growing trees give us the best return, but there's a lot of enthusiasm, which I understand she reflected, on perhaps some Crown land, certainly Māori land, to substantially revegetate with indigenous forest. But the key point is that it's a tick for climate change, it's a tick for regional development, it's a tick for marginal Māori land and some of their ne'er-do-well owners. They will be out planting trees.
Have you met with James Shaw from the Greens yet?
I have to tell you that it's with great regret I've had to put up with day in, day out, week in, week out. Winston Peters hates James Shaw, won't talk to him. It's not true, utterly false. And you won't find anyone in this whole world that has heard me say a bad thing about him, privately or publicly.
I know, but have you met with him?
That said, the answer is yes.
You have met with him?
I was the meeting last night.
Well, you know, I kind of get a bit sick and tired of it when you malignantly paint someone that way without any regret for the veracity or the integrity of what you're saying.
Mr.
I'm just
Peters,
asking,
do
have
you
you met
still
with him
want
yet?
an inquiry into Xianyang, and will this government be moving ahead with an inquiry?
Well, can I ask you this question? Do you think it's right that an MP should be defamed in the way that he was without someone trying to put the record straight? What do you think?
Do you want an inquiry?
Well, I don't think an MP should be defamed in the way that he is if it's not true.
So
Now, what do you think about that?
So that's a yes?
Well, I don't think that MP should be defamed, wantonly, libelled in the way he has been. So I'd like to know who's going to defend him in that context.
will there
Mr.
be a
Peters, sorry, can I just-
government-initiated inquiry, though?
Well, I kind of thought you'd be screaming out for an inquiry to clear that person's name.
Can we go back
You're-
to
you're
the
the Deputy
Greens?
Prime Minister, you can
Have you
scream
met
out
with them
one.
yet?
Yeah, I'm not the Minister of Justice.
So
Am I?
will there be one investigation?
Well,
into Xianyang?
look, I said it before the election, make it very clear that I think this is an allegation that has to be cleared up. That's what we said before the election, I don't deny that. But I would have thought everybody in the press gallery would be concerned that someone has been, by one of their colleagues, so maliciously maligned.
If it's an issue of false declaration for citizenship, it's an internal affairs matter actually, so it does fall within New Zealand First's domain.
Well, not according to your paper, you had it in the headlines in the main front page. You didn't say it was internal affairs when you wrote that article, so why are you changing your argument now?
Well, I
Mr.
don't know what
Peters,
you're
can I just ask
talking
you-
about.
You wrote about Mr. Yang and his failure to declare in the New Zealand Herald, and you headlined it. I don't see anything about it being an internal affairs matter when you wrote that article, or your paper did.
Can I ask a broader, slightly-
Sorry, don't roll your eyes, I remember reading it.
slightly broader question about Crown Māori relations and the new role for Calvin Davis and the high number of Māori MPs in both your caucus and Labour's. Do you think that with a change of government and a change of approach, that you can make progress on the Ngāpuhi Treaty settlement?
Well, first of all, New Zealand First takes the view that we are New Zealanders. First, right? He happens to be half Maori, half Croatian. I happen to be half Scots, half Maori. No one's perfect. He's
Irish.
He's
And
half
Maori.
Irish, half Maori. We are New Zealanders first, and we adamantly take that view.
Yeah.
That said, we think the Ngāpuhi settlement should have been completed a long time ago. And we hope we can be of help.
Do you think is there an innovation that you can bring as a cabinet that you think you can get a breakthrough there? Is the question.
Central North Island tribes had 14 tribes in the group and 3 seriously dislocated. And in the space of 4 meetings, we fixed that up for the last Labour government. We think we can be constructive with this one.
And will you involve yourself personally as Deputy Prime Minister to help make that breakthrough?
Well, I've made that offer. Shane has made that offer. We will make that offer.
Yeah, no, we've both made that offer, and Winston's absolutely correct. I mean, if you look at Penny Henare, the grandson of Sir James Henare, he's basically the paramount chief of the Ngāpuhi, so he's well connected. Calvin's from a very well-known whānau, and obviously there's always some sensitivities. But I would say, folks, that the decision made within Ngāpuhi land at our national treaty estate to establish, in commemoration of Sir Aparana Ngata's great speech in 1940, The Price of Citizenship, a legacy Māori battalion museum, reflects where we want to go with Crown Māori relations. Because when you use the word citizenship, it's as much about obligation as rights. And it's a civic virtue that we want to see amplified within the dynamic and the narrative amongst our own Māori people when they relate both to themselves and the rest of New Zealand.
Shane, you have extensive
Can I just say before we slide past that, Shane's utterly right. But this place got a record of fixing things. Mount Hikurangi, for example, the Tūhoe settlement, the Taranaki land settlement, New Zealand First, or its members put all that together. And we were critical in the Central North Island tribe settlement when the whole thing had hit the wall, had a massive roadblock, and we fixed it. So we're confident if given a chance, but we were never given a chance with the national government on the Ngāpuhi matter. This time we think it looks much more bright.
Mr. Peters, following on from Mr. Gower's earlier question, this 38-page document outlining ministerial conduct, it seems, when might we see that released?
Nothing in it about ministerial conduct, that's in the cabinet manual.
So what's this?
This is New Zealand.
So what's this document then that Mr. Gower asked about? This?
Well, it's a document of precision on various areas of policy, commitment and development.
So
So
when
is
will
it
we-
between Labour and New Zealand First?
Yes, exactly.
And when do you think we might see that released?
It'll be unfolded. It'll unfold over the months and weeks to come, but that is for the province of the Prime Minister.
Just on Tracy's
to release.
portfolio, did you ask for children's or the ministry, or did Jacinda Ardern ask you to take that? What's the thinking there?
Actually, I didn't ask for children, but Ms Ardern did speak to me directly and asked me if I would take it on, because it's something she's very passionate about. So I was really honoured when it was offered.
Did you want the broadcasting portfolio?
I didn't, I guess I wasn't expecting to get necessarily anything. I worked for New Zealand First, and I worked during the election to try and get as many New Zealand First MPs back into this parliament. It wasn't about what I could get.
Is it true that National offered you more ministerial portfolios, and did that make the decision harder for some of your caucus?
Well, how can that be true when one of your colleagues said the reverse? No, you know they did. But let me say that I'm sworn to confidentiality and secrecy,
Just on
and I'll
Audrey's
keep my
earlier
word on it.
question about Kiwi Rail, is the Kiwi Rail board on notice?
Well, look, Newshub had a habit in the campaign of taking something that had been on film sometime for 8 months and putting it up as, here's what they promised. They hadn't told the world that, of course. Never even put it in the publication, never showed it on 6 o'clock news. But we're now asking us, we're going to honour this, which we never showed. Remember that?
Yeah, but we
You did it
showed-
twice.
we showed
Now
you
you're
saying
asking me.
you
Now
said-
you ask me. Are the statements I made pre-election Now that perchance I happen to be the Minister of SOEs, ones I'm going to follow. Well, let's see what I find out.
See, I mean, you say, have you ever broken a promise before? No, I haven't. I mean, that's been your line for the entire election campaign.
Yeah, well, you can't show me one I haven't kept. What?
Well, are you going to
Can
keep
you?
this promise?
Pardon?
Are you going to keep this promise?
Well, let me just wait till I'm properly, thoroughly briefed. But I know the history of New Zealand Railways, and personally I've been concerned at them being described as not being able to be competitive with other modes of transport, when I know with its history in the Booz Allen Report circa 992 that all that background is utterly false. They can be, like other world-class railways, a serious contender in a that's maritime road rail transport plan.
Just looking at a broader issue, and that came up in the, just looking at a broader issue in the negotiations around whānau ora, that you have had some positions against in the past in Parliament. Was it a negotiating kind of point, like with the Māori seats, that that you didn't pursue some of your previous views further in the negotiations? What happened, I guess, is my question.
Well, I can't say that this was a subject that we sat down and discussed with Labor to any great extent, other than to know we believe that Labor was coming, and their members, particularly my members, were coming with new eyes as to what it meant in terms of delivery of promises. You can have all the PR and all the spin you like, but we know that Māoridom, we are taking over in a climate where Māoridom is in a serious crisis in home ownership and health and every other aspect. And I think we could say this, between Labor and New Zealand First, there was a commonality of understanding, is we want those 4 things that people need fixed up as an absolute priority, starting with housing and affordability.
Shane, you probably more experienced in fishing than anyone else in Parliament right now. Were you disappointed you didn't get the portfolio, and do you think the allegations around your campaign donations played a part in not getting the portfolio?
I'll try. You know my history. I try to avoid reading about allegations. I did ask Winston if I could have a leadership role in the forestry strategy. My history in the Fisheries Commission is well known, but I've got no regrets about moving on from 72 squabbling Maori iwis over fisheries and all such matters, and I'm really focused on the forestry, so no regrets.
Shane, how o whakaaro mo te Māori Battalion?
Mo te hoko whitu atu, whakamiharo. I amenengi ai te tono, ke tū ai te taiwhare taonga, mo te pakanga tuatahi, pakanga tuarua, ki te papa ki Waitangi. I personally find Sir Aparana Ngata's Price of Citizenship speech one of the greatest displays of Māori oratory. It needs to be taught more regularly amongst our own people and shared with Kiwis. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of the North that I'm very grateful that the Prime Minister-elect and Winston were able to include such a project with related viewing tourism projects on an iconic site which I think needs to be revamped, the Treaty of Waitangi grounds.
Mr. Peters,
Can I just say, look, I think Shane's being too modest. The reality is, here's Ngata, he's at Waitangi, and he's telling young Maori soldiers going off to their death that that's the price of being equal in New Zealand. That's why it's significant.
Shane, ka tau atu wena kōrero ki roto I te mātauranga ngā kura me rātu au.
Ai. Aha kua peke ana I tai o tātou whanaunga kia whakanui ai ngā pakanga I wainga tunu I a ngāpu I tainui a tauranga moana ki te krauna me hoki mai no tātou ki ngā kōrero mo te hopa whitu atu. I think underlying, I probably said enough, but underlying the story of that legacy museum is a contrasting narrative to what has been promoted by the Māori Party. Now I know the history of New Zealand wars, Ruapekapeka and other places. It's important that the different iwi own that, understand it, but I'm about Sir Aparana Ngata's great speech that you are going to meet the full cost of citizenship. You are going to the Second World War, and you're probably, a number of you looking at me doing this haka, are going to die. Now that is a profound statement, and I think that's the narrative that should be built. into the Māori identity of New Zealand, and if I have my way, it's going to be elevated.
Mr. Peters, there have been calls here for an independent inquiry into the involvement of the Chinese government and Chinese government donations into political activity. We've had seen something similar in Australia. Considering the reports about Zhang Yang, do you think that an independent inquiry into Chinese involvement in New Zealand's political process is something that might be beneficial?
You're the fourth estate, and one of your jobs was to ensure that any concern of that type was highlighted a long way before the closing days of the election. It happened in Australia, and it wasn't happening here. Maybe that tells you something about we've got to all pick our game up.
That's a fair point, but I think there were some media reports about Zhang Yang, and following on from those reports and raising some questions about what was raised in those reports, do you think that an inquiry might be beneficial?
Look, it's early days and we're not going to get sidetracked indeed to it here, but the fact is that professor from that report out of Canterbury University is a seriously internationally recognised report. It has been on ABC in Australia and elsewhere in the world, and it's not getting the coverage it should be getting here. But it's over to you. You're the fourth estate.
In trying to give it
You're
more
out here.
coverage,
Your job is to keep us all honest.
in trying to give it some more coverage here, do you agree with the report and the calls to establish an inquiry into the Chinese?
I mean, did I read the report and take it seriously like other international interests did? Well, I take everything that's properly researched seriously, yes. Even some of your stuff.
Do you intend to discuss the matter with
Are you
Cabinet?
going to stay here or move into the beehive?
Eh?
Are you going to stay here in this building or will you move into the beehive?
I think we're four ministers and an undersecretary, and we've really seriously got to be a coordinated unit inside a cohesive government. And I think that traipsing across backwards and forwards, when we're such a critical part of this government, means we've got to go there. We don't like it. We don't think it's healthy over there. I can tell you, I'm not recommending my colleagues go there, but just the way it is.
Why is it not healthy?
Well, everybody knows it's famous for not being a healthy place.
In what
Look,
regard?
well, look at some of the people that are there now.
Well, hey, here's a quick question. Two issues to do with the parliamentary precinct. If I could issue them to you in two tranches. One is where in the Parliament, in the House of Representatives, will you seat yourself, obviously in the Deputy Prime Minister's position, where will you seat and where do you intend to seat your MPs? And the second tranche of my question, which is a slight stretch to be related, but could you explain to New Zealanders why you have stopped the Parliament extension as well? So just
Well,
two
first of all,
tranche
a tranche is never about one thing. You've asked me about two things, but they're not two collections of things. Okay, get the language right for the start. Now, let me just with precision say we haven't quite worked out where we're sitting inside the debating chamber. That's the debate we're going to be having in the next few hours. And as for the parliamentary building, well, I want to tell you that when we first talked about an alternative parliament building, I was a younger MP then, obviously, but I argued for the biggest wooden building in the Southern Hemisphere, which was built for us, to be reclaimed by us, used by us. I was ignored by a bunch of Philistines back then. And then, of course, they went to buy this place, and I didn't say anything at the time, but I did advise then Peter Tapsell, who was coming as the new speaker, that we should build a debating chamber that reflected we were in an MMP environment and not first past the post. We were ignored on that. And then, of course, they sought to privatise Bowen House, which the government then owned. Property Services owned it. And I opposed that, and then I get approached by the National Party as to whether it's costing us a whole lot of money, can we buy it back? Around about then, I thought this is getting so bad. No one's flying a white flag, no one's owning up for incompetent decision making, and now they want us to sign up, as every other party did, for the new parliamentary building. That sort of obscene, selfish, egregious behaviour had to be stopped, and there's a whole lot of people out there, and possibly, I don't know, but I think for the cost of it, we probably can house 10,000 people. We'll get them into houses. So we took the obvious choice.
But what about the argument from the National Party, very briefly, not saying I agree with
The National Party made all those decisions.
But no, but that the New Zealand taxpayer is paying a high amount of rent for this building that we're in now, and it could be paid back by buildings. This is the argument advanced by the New
Well,
Zealand National Party.
I've just been through a campaign where they painted themselves, with your help, as being the stable economic geniuses and knew what they were doing. Now I find out that in economic terms, or when it comes to building, they couldn't organise a so-and-so in a brewery. And this is a classic case, Bowenhouse, of a mistake after mistake after mistake which they have made. For the second time in my career, I'm delighted to say I've stopped the waste of public funds and we're getting on with helping ordinary people.
So
do
you're
you think that
actually
they should sign
asking
the lease?
Parliamentary Service to dishonour commercial contracts which are in train already, isn't that something as well?
Well, if the contracts were in train already, why were they coming across to me, representing New Zealand First, asking for our sign-up to it? I never gave them a sign-up. That document does not have New Zealand First signature on it. So why would they go on ahead regardless?
Well, because they presumably they didn't think they needed unanimity between all parties.
Well, that's very
For
foolish.
parliamentary service.
Well, for the umpteenth time, that's extraordinarily foolish. I mean, the National Party has got a record of making these mistakes, and they did it on the Kermadex. They were told, don't go down that path. No, we know better. They go down that path, then they come across rather sheepishly with their tail between legs asking us to help them renege on a contract.
But you voted for the Kermadex legislation at first reading. Why did you do that? if you
To
were-
go to select committee, so you all might know much more than you know right now. Voting for something on the first reading is never of your approval. It's to take it to a first reading so the public might, for the first time, find out what really happened here.
So if you were so opposed to it, why vote for it in the first place? Why not and give your opposition then?
Well, I'll send you my Hansard. Have a good look with it. It's clear as daylight. Who said what when? Nobody wants to be saying, look, I told you so. But I have to tell you, Andrea, I darn well did.
So do you think that they should re-sign the lease for Bowen House then?
Eh?
Do you think that Parliamentary Service should re-sign the lease for this building?
Well, I think we're in a very parlous state here. What I'd like to do, personally, what I'd really like to do is plead with Victoria University to give us our old building back and go back and where we used to be one time in one of the most magnificent wooden buildings there is in the whole world.
How much would that cost?
Well, there you go. See, it costs a whole lot more less than this.
A whole lot less than
I believe
renting?
a whole lot less than this, yes.
But you'd have to rely on them giving you the building rather than the government buying it?
Well, you know, they're a university and they have got a commerce department. They're not going to give us anything. But we could probably do much better. We could probably do much better with Vic University Law School than going ahead with this white elephant.
The argument about this building though
there?
was
I mean,
that
you're
it would
happy
be
to pay
cheaper
tens
to
of
build
millions of
the
dollars.
new building in the long run than to stay here. Do you have a third option, or do you just
Well,
want to
I
stay
try to
here?
remind you, who keeps changing their argument here? Not me, the National Party.
Yeah, but we are where we are, and the argument
Oh,
as of-
okay,
as of,
so...
as
so
of last year was that it would be cheaper to move.
So
Do you think not?
if you're the born-to-rule crowd, the blessed bleeds without the class, you can make any old decision and the consequences are nothing.
But are you saying we should?
Joe
we
Bloggs
should
doesn't
pay-
have that lucky fortune in his life, nor do we as a political party.
Are you saying we should spend more money just because they made a mistake in the past than we
No,
need
no,
to
I think
in the
they're better.
present?
I would like to see us work on better options, and this time with people who are better tuned to the real estate market than a bunch of temporary empowered politicians.
So it's something that isn't a new building but isn't staying here. You think there's a third option?
I'd even consult with the media as to what you think, because actually you're part of the premises.
That's very
You might
kind.
have a view.
Do you have a third option in mind?
Not yet.
Just coming back to the debate.
But the law school is one.
Just coming back to the debating chamber, is one of the options that your ministers also sit on the front bench with the Labour Party, perhaps close to the Speaker there? Is that one option, or would you like to be sort of more out on the...
I think it's quite wrong for me to have this discussion without having the discussion primarily with the Prime Minister and the Labour Party.
Mr. Peters.
I really don't think that's fair.
Mr. Peters, the racing industry today, how do you assess it given when you were last Minister of Racing?
Well, when they've shoveled all the stuff out in the morning with their shovel, this morning, and at 4 o'clock, in an environment that most people don't understand, in a very tough industry, high risk, dangerous as well, and for very little thanks in most of the racetracks of this country, $5,000 for a race win, which used to be enough to look after a horse for a year, and now you got to win 6 of them. When they've done all that this morning, they'll be feeling a whole lot better that New Zealand First is back. Thank you very much.